All right, welcome to our monthly workshop offered by the University of Kentucky and our Work-Life Benefits Office. We are here today talking about parenting styles. Do they matter? And we do have a panel group here with us today. They're going to introduce themselves and get us started. Thank you guys for being with us.
Thank you so much, Zeta, for having us. So,
Thank
welcome
you.
to all you that are here today. I wanted to chime in and get going. I think Zeta did a good job of framing things up. I want to introduce myself, but maybe before I do that, I want to introduce the amazing fathers that have joined me today. And Tyrone, since you're the first one on the list, and by the way, that was just alphabetical, guys. There's no favoritism here, just so we're all aware of that. But Tyrone, why don't you begin by just introducing yourself? Let people know what you do, how you're connected, and maybe the age of your children, and anything else you want to add, but relatively brief.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? All righty. My name is Tyrone Atkinson. Good afternoon, everybody. I am an extension specialist for Family Consumer Sciences Extension at UK. I've been in my role, working with Extension for about 17 years now. And the work that I do is with youth and families, more or less, family background. And I've been working with primarily military families and limited resource audiences around the state for a long time through other grants, and I do a lot of grant focus work. And I have a 10-year-old son, and his name is Joshua, who's in fifth grade here in Lexington. Thank you.
Conrad?
Hi, I'm Conrad. Well, first of all, can you all hear me? Okay. Okay. I'm Conrad Davies. So I was a part of the UK community for about 11 years. I taught at the university in the department in the College of Communication for those 11 years, taught a lot of number of courses. I stepped out entrepreneurially, started a nonprofit. I do some private work. On the nonprofit side, you can see on the screen, we started a work called Be Reconciled, where we help people with reconciliation in areas of faith, in marriage, in family, in various other contexts. So we just help people walk through those tough elements of relationships in all kinds of relationships. And I'm also a talent, strengths, and professional development coach where I step into organizations and we talk through a variety of topics of various things: identity, calling, fear, shame, interpersonal dynamics within the workplace, on and on and on. So I do a lot there. In terms of just a lot of teaching, training, coaching, development type work overall. I do have three children. My oldest is 15, boy. I got two boys and a girl. Oldest is 15, high school sophomore. My middle is 13. He's an eighth grader. And I've got a daughter who is 11, and she's in sixth grade.
Fantastic. Man, what a beautiful family you've got growing. It's so funny, Conrad, because I've known you for so long when your children were just little and pregnant. Your wife was pregnant with Sarah. It's amazing. And Tyrone the same, man. It's wild to hear that Josh was already 10 years old because we met before he was on the scene. So it's been nice, I think, in some ways to add to just the relationships that are here on this call today. But I won't stop there. I will introduce myself. I'm David Weisenhorn. I work here also in Family and Consumer Sciences Extension. My title is Parenting and Child Development Specialist. And what that does is it leads me to what you might imagine. I get to work with families across the state. I get to work with help building marriages and relationships, as well as working with families and children on their developmental process. So really excited. And as I listen to you two gentlemen to introduce yourselves, I realize not only do we come to the work that we're doing as fathers, but we also come to the work and I think the experiences that we have working with other youth. I heard coaching in there, Conrad and Tyrone. I know both of you personally, so I know that you both coach your children's leagues, and as they were developing and growing older, we were all involved in coaching. So I think sometimes too, in just the questions I want to talk to today, maybe using those experiences too, maybe not just with your own children, but the way in which we've interacted with other children. But what the day is about is whether or not parenting styles do they matter. And I thought maybe the first thing we should do is make sure that everybody that's listening knows what parenting styles there actually are. And there's this idea that there's four parenting styles that most of us fall into. And on the straight, I'll let you look at the slide and kind of see it as we begin to discuss. But the authoritarian parenting style has low warmth and it has high control. This parent is oftentimes considered the strict, harsh one that is good about establishing boundaries, but oftentimes is seen as demanding and actually doesn't have as much warmth when it comes to connecting with children. There's the second style is a permissive style. Some may hear this as a laissez-faire. We've also heard this called the doormat style. And this parenting style is high in warmth, cares deeply about the child, but has low control. So what that typically looks like in a situation would be high in the love and the feeling, caring much about how the child feels, wanting to hear a lot of information and feedback from the child about how they should do things or when they should do things. Oftentimes, this parent has few rules. They avoid the disciplinarian step, and they oftentimes let the child lead. The authoritative, this might be considered the active parent, is high in both warmth and control. And this really tends to be the mix of the authoritative and the permissive parenting styles. So it has high in love and in firmness, explains the rules, listens to the child, and offers choices within limits. And the last one is the uninvolved the parenting style, which we oftentimes don't include when I talk and teach parenting. This is often one that I don't even mention because this parent would not be in that class. They would be uninvolved. Oftentimes, maybe something emotionally distant has occurred, and oftentimes neglect can result as a form of this type of parent. One of the things I want to say before we get into our questions about this is what I notice, and I want my listeners to hear this as well, is that when you look at those, it's easy to say, oh, the authoritarian parent or the permissive parent are not good parenting styles. The reality is that there is good in every parenting style, regardless of with the exception of the uninvolved. In those top three, there's good in all of those parenting styles. And if I had you, just by a show of hands, say, who do you think out of the father and mother of a parenting relationship, who do you think is oftentimes the authoritarian parent? My guess is many of you would say the father. And if I asked the same of the permissive, I would probably hear an overwhelming response that falls to the mother. And what I want to share with you is that I don't think that's by mistake, that I think by design that we together form the perfect parent. And that's what you see with the authoritative parent, is that oftentimes we look at our spouses who might have a different parenting style, which chances are they do have a different parenting style. And we say, you should be more like us. And that oftentimes is what creates the conflict. So I'm going to let that kind of simmer because that's the framework that I want to work around today, and I want to jump into including our panelists. So, gentlemen, in no certain order do I want you to answer these, but I'd love to hear from both of you. If I were to ask your children this morning, what are three words that you would use to describe your father? What do you think your children would say? And maybe the follow-up on that before you answer is what would you want them to say? Maybe those things are different. Maybe they're not. Let's hear.
Well, I did some thanks for the questions, David, because for those that don't know, Dave sent these questions ahead of time to get us to ponder. And I actually asked my kids this question yesterday.
Good.
I want you to hear the response. And my wife was with me. I sent all your questions, David, to my said, "Hey, let's process these." And then here's what my oldest said. He said, "Open, fun, and exciting." My middle son said, "Chill, fun, and free." And then my daughter said, "Fun, honest, and caring." Well, if you know their personalities fits, they all paralleled fun. Um, and I thought about that for a second. I was like, okay, hopefully we're not buddy buddies with our kids. It's just like super, this like this. What's to me about buddy buddy like this? If you know my kids, we get a lot of commentary about how respectful they are. There's a discipline that we have in our household and the way we train our children. But what we've learned over time, and I want to make sure I'm not going beyond the question for now, but we've learned over time is that we need to create a fun environment of learning for them in their lifestyle and that fun environment. And I see them to say that. I think they matched what I would hope they would say. That the environment for learning is not you're our robot. You just need to make us look good. We need to make sure that you don't shame us. You don't make us look bad. The Davies name is bad. No, it's more of, no, this is about you're going to leave our house one day and I
Mm,
need you to be prepared. And so while you're in our home, we're going to make this learning environment of all the different things we would desire with our value system, who we are. We want to make this an environment to where you want to be home. You want to be trained. You want
mm,
to grow in who you are. And so for them to say these things and to match fun, fun, fun reinforces the second part of the question of I wish they would say was that it was fun. And so
yeah.
they love being around us and love being trained by us. And they recognize that when we have to be tough, they're okay with it. They're like, you know what, dad, mom love us for us, and they're okay with it. And they would say that. So I'm given I guess I'm trying to answer the question. That's the way they actually described it. And then the fun part matched. The open, the exciting, the caring, that was all great too. I don't know what other language I would put, but it was nice to hear that uh, those are very life-giving words that they gave. So I'll leave it there.
Conrad, I love the fact that you included all the responses because I'm going to come back to that as we continue to get into the temperaments and how those things work. Tyrone, what did you find out? Or what would your child say? Maybe you didn't ask them. What
Right.
would you
So
say?
that could have went south. I did not take it literal in asking. I think I love Conrad's answers though. And mine, what I said, I think he would say is that I'm always there because I'm like his bud. You know, if you know me and my son's relationship, I think with him being kind of a COVID baby, he spent so much time with just adults, with being the only child, that I feel like at times he believes I'm his best friend. So I'm there to be there with him. So always there, but also in that is me always getting on him about something, right? So I put a negative thing in there that he thinks I'm always just on his case, right? But the third thing I think he would say is I'm funny. Just that we're always playful, we're always laughing. And to that, and now I definitely am going to ask him when he gets home because I want to clarify now because Conrad's making me wish I would have already asked him. But the three things I think I wish he would say, and my heart says that, and I put that, but that I'm present, that his dad is always present, and that I'm available.
Mm,
Um, and then the third is that, and maybe this is more of a adult wish, but that I'm emotionally healthy.
mm.
Um, I feel like those are the three things he really wishes, and that would be helpful for him in his journey.
Man, I love that. Um, I love that you're talking about the things that you're hoping him to say in the future. And I think sometimes when we talk about my child, I talk to my children about the same thing. And here's some differences. I heard strict, tough, honest, loud, smart, and fun. Those were all the words that my children used, and they were different depending on who was saying it. And I love that because it shows. And Conrad, I think this goes back to what you were talking about. There's a piece of personality which we're going to get to that really is coloring that response, right? It's what do I want to say? It's influencing that response, the way our children receive us, and so much of that comes through how they're already designed in their temperament. But so I'm going to stay with these parenting styles before we move to the temperament piece. So what every dad kind of borrows a play from their dad, but in understanding that there might be a play that they say, hey, listen, I would never do what my father used to do. So maybe I could hear from you too. What was something that you took from your father that you said, hey, you know what? I want to continue that, but but what was the thing that you said, I won't do it like this? And maybe why? What's that about?
Yeah, it's a super great question. I kind of pondered on and reflected on some of my upbringing with my father in my early years, and kind of goes back to my answers for the first. My dad was very active and around early on, especially in my school age time. That just kindergarten to fifth grade, just being very active, and I can just remember him always being somewhere near me, right? So that is something that I take with and incorporate that into my son's life, and trying to always be there and utilizing time. Like it just feel like there are so many things, especially in this is a work life, you know, panel, right? We think about how much we give to work, how much we give to other things, and how little time we have with our family, especially after that 8 to 5 time, depending on our work schedule and flexibility. But my goal, and I saw that with my dad, is that he always made time to be around us, me and my brother.
Mm,
Um, like playbook wise that I've had to bench, that I am not trying to incorporate is not keeping my word. My dad was really good at making commitments but not following through.
mm,
And it became sort of disdain for me to always be hopeful, but yet met with the letdown, right?
mm,
Of him not coming through or not keeping his word. And for me, to me, the most important thing I can do is to keep my word. Let my yes be yes. And and
mm,
and, and if I commit something, it's not to be perfect. We definitely in our family try to make sure that our son understands that we are not performance based. It's not how well we do all the time, but that we're loving and that we try to keep our commitments and we honor those commitments. So just keeping my word is most important.
Man, I like so. Are there specific things, Tyrone, that you have done to assure that happens, or are there things that you have done that you've avoided that that help that process? Either one of those, and maybe there's a both and that I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, and I think it's really good. And framing it in the perspective of work life balance.
Yeah.
There are so many times I come home and I'm exhausted
Yeah.
just from doing, or I could come home. I do camps in the summer for families, and you know, early on in his childhood, I would come home so tired and try to communicate, hey buddy, I need a day. But your kids don't understand all the things you grapple with and you do for your work. So to come home and they be ready to jump on you and ready for you to go, and it's just like, okay, I may need a minute. And I had to realize that I have to reserve some part of energy. I have to put a part in reserve, that reserve tank, and find the will to just, hey, he work and how much we give to other people, and not really having that much to give when we get home, and trying to keep that at just to stay cognizant of that fact.
Mm,
I'm required to give. I get to give to work. I get to give to other people, but I'm required to give to my family. That
mm.
is this is not a option. So and having to switch the mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I think what I hear is like it's very much a discipline for you in that it doesn't become a choice or an option. It's just like, this is what I have to do. This is the responsibility that I've assumed as a father, and this is part of it. Would you say
Absolutely.
that? Yeah, that's awesome. Conrad, I want to ask you the same thing, but at the same time, I've got quite a bit of questions. I know I'm not going to get through all of them, so I want to toss another one at you. If you would rather answer the first question instead of the second, it's up to you. But this would be the other question that I have is that when we talk about parenting and we're talking about this parenting style, parenting toddlers, you've got three. So parenting toddlers is so much different than parenting teenagers, as you are well accustomed now. A couple of years you've been in that teenage thing. How has your coaching style or parenting style, how has that had to shift or change as your children have grown?
Yeah. So I think when my kids were younger, there was a lot of framing, direction. This is where we're going, family values, what we do. You come along. You in many ways, I said there's a yielding and submitting
Mm,
because there's crafting of saying this is the direction of life that your entrusted parents, we were entrusted to train your life. So follow along. This is the parents you've been given. And so that was, again, well, I put it this way, my wife and I had to be intentional. What are those
mm,
seeds, those plantings, those things that we're needing to see fruit in? And we failed a lot in various ways. One example that kept coming to mind when I was processing this question, I was remembering a time when my oldest was in whatever grade, and I remember disciplining him. And part of my discipline included physical punishment. And I just remember how hard that was for me internally.
mm,
I mean, I was struggling, but I was thinking, well, you're not responding to what we're asking of you. I mean, it started with voice first, and we started with a lot of vocal responses, expecting a response. There was no responses over time. And then it got to physical punishment. Hard, so hard. And it got to the place where it was so hard. I just had to go process that with my wife. I had to go process in other ways, other people, other older parents, and just navigating just frameworks around punishment, di- those kind of things. Well, what's interesting now is that this particular child, it's of course I've got two teenagers. The one child I'm referring to doesn't, obviously there's no physical punishment there needed, and this child's responsiveness is so timely. It's actually quite weird compared to his other siblings. He's just
Are you talking about your firstborn versus your secondborn?
yeah. Um, I'm actually, yeah, my firstborn is very timely in his response to us. Well, my secondborn, he's timely in his own way, but they both have their own timeliness. But it's interesting how I don't know. I don't know if there's a science behind it or whatever. I just know that whatever seeds we were planting then, we're seeing fruit of things now in teenage years where there's not some of the teenage garbage, I should call it, that's sometimes happening. And I can't say magic bullet or magic pill or magic thing we did. I just know that we went through a gunky early gardening phase
Mm,
in his life that now the fruit of things, I'm thinking, wow, when you were younger, the timeliness wasn't this quick. But now to see it because of consistency and intentionality, it's interesting to see the relationship with the older two. They have their own ways. Their timeliness of response is still not as, I mean, I can compare them and say one's quicker than the other, but they're different because one has to process, the other one doesn't. The one's just very real quick to respond. So my point is that this idea of finding myself looking at when they were toddlers and when they were younger, it seemed hard. It
mm,
was easy in terms of authority
mm,
because they couldn't do anything.
mm,
But then because I think of that background, it's
mm,
become easier now, but our coaching has changed to where I think they now have a cognition to understand that there are consequences to your actions. There are things that are important for you. You are responsible. And
mm,
let me try to end with this: is that both become older. My older two, my teenagers are young men. I have intentionally done a young man ceremony with them where I don't ascribe personally to adolescence, but I call them men. You're young men in my house. You're just beginning the journey. And I don't like adolescence because sometimes it gets extended to their 20s, 30s, whatever. So I say they're young men. And so I said, I'm not going to treat you like a little child anymore. You're a young man. You got to put away these childish things. So I start putting weight on them having to take responsibility for their actions and decisions with the context of knowing that there were seeds that were planted. I prepare them. I said, when you become a man, there's things I'm not gonna, right now you're a child, you're learning, you're developing. I'm gonna let you be a participate in some manhood stuff. But when you become a man, I'm gonna treat you differently. And I prepare them for that in different conversations. So now that they're at that age where I've transitioned them into manhood, it's amazing to see their responsibility. That when I respond, they respond. It's not perfect. I don't want to paint a picture that I'm doing this well. It is, but it's neat to see what we planted then and now how much easier it is now. Um, in
Wow.
their,
So in that parenting style, Conrad, I love it, man, because I hear that. First of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that you said, man, we messed up a lot. And you used a gardening analogy, which I love because I think about planting something is the messiest process, right? My wife is we're trying to plant right now. It's raining, so we're thinking, oh yes, you got to get it while the soil's soft and it's muddy and you're deep in it and you're putting it in and you're trying to cover it all and make sure that there's good mulch around and it's getting the nutrients it needs, there's good watershed and how it's all falling so that the mature plant becomes is pretty in its glory. And so, man, I just really appreciated the analogy because I think it puts a lot of words into it. And the other thing is the mistake. I want to just say that when we begin parenting, we got to find out what works. And early on, authoritarian, right? Just being able to put the guides and say, hey, this is the bounds. We're not sticking things in outlets. You're not touching hot stoves. You're not putting knives in your mouth. The basics, of like, I just need to keep you alive is a very authoritarian type parenting style. It kind of requires a little bit more of that. As they age, it sounds like you were able, it almost sounded, I mean, the words sounded like it was easier. The expectation had been clear. Again, a very authoritarian, right? We're making clear, understand, where the bounds are, what the trip points are. Now we're going to move into now respecting you, maybe even acknowledging you as an adult. I'm going to begin treating you differently so that parenting style is shifting as my children age. Man, I really love that. I appreciate that a lot. I think we're kind of getting into this point to where it's important to hit that second piece that I want to talk about that I think often influences our parenting styles. And that is the temperament. This is hardwiring. This is factory establishment, guys. When a child comes into the world, they come factory equipped with a temperament, with how they're going to be. And there's three main temperaments. So there's some researchers, Dr. Thomas, and there's a female, I can't remember. Ooh, sorry, I'm gonna go back. And their parenting styles, they said that most children are parenting temperament styles fall into three categories. There's an easygoing, calm, flexible child. That's 40% of our children come with that hard wiring. And then you've got 10% that come with like my son, which is that energetic, intense, we might be called strong spirited, right? The spirited child or strong willed. And then you have the third type, which is a cautious, quiet, thoughtful, and slow to warm up. And you can look at these, and anybody quick on the math might say, but David, those don't add up. You're leaving 40% out. And the reality is that around 35% of children have some sort of mix of these, two or three. But what's interesting about temperament is that one, they're all okay. They're all normal. If your child falls into that feisty child, that 10%, that doesn't mean anything's wrong with them. They're normal. But these temperaments have a lot to do with how a child responds to a parent, oftentimes requiring when we have more children, one or more children, they typically don't have the same temperament. And so I'm curious, what how do you adapt from one child being maybe that very cautious, slow to warm up, thoughtful child versus that evil Knievel, that one that's trying to jump off the couch or a tall building every time you turn around. What do you think? How do you make those shifts? How do you make that parenting shift, Conrad?
All right.
Yeah, sure. So my oldest is our most intelligent child. He is just, when I say most intelligent, it doesn't make him better or worse than the other, but just the way he acquires information, his style, he doesn't enjoy the educational system's giving of information. He loves a lot of storytelling, a lot of engagement. Let's go out and do something. Let's talk about it. So let's just he's very kinesthetic in his learning and very mobile. I mean, he's a soccer player. I was a soccer player at the college and everything, and he's probably 2 to 3 to 4 years ahead of me in soccer play by the time I was his age. And like he's just a phenomenal. And so what happens, and when I say that, is that I had to recognize that he loves information, but it has to be in a way that I've got to give it to him through story. So I've told him hundreds, if not thousands, of stories in 2 to 5 minute sound bites of just different story about this and nighttime when I go to bed. It's like, let me tell you a story when I was 10 and blah, 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 blah. And he's retained all of that. He'll play it back to me. He's like, Dad, yeah, when you were this age and this and this and this, I'm thinking, you remember that detail? Wow. And so then I switched to my middle son, who is contemplative, thoughtful, not as gregarious and out there and spotlight like his older brother. And for him, um, he's our most studious child. So if I put him on a task and I get him to go wrestle with something, he'll get it. He can hear the stories, but I have to switch with him to say, "Hey, my middle son is Levi." It's like, "Hey, Levi, we go do this and this and this for me," and he'll come back with such insight. He's like, "Dad, when I did this, this, and this, I learned this and I learned that." I couldn't do that with my oldest son. In fact, my middle son's the kind of kid that if we go on a trip, I can create an Excel spreadsheet, give him receipts after every expense, and he will go into the Excel spreadsheet and fill out all the categories. And then I started recently teaching him how to like create the formulas. And he's like, Dad, well, if I add the sum of this and this and this, and then I divide it by that, it'll create. I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? So he's our technology guy in the house, my middle son, if I can frame a personality. Well, my daughter, she's my little free-spirited, whimsical, all over the place gal. And so we make up silly songs anytime we have to do stuff for school or whatever else. I'm doing it in the form of song with her. And I am in very silly ways. We're making up crazy songs. I'll even tell her a story with exaggeration. In fact, my nighttime some of the normal is that I'll sit at the edge of her bed on the floor, and it's kind of her indicator to say, "Okay, I'm gonna go sit down on the floor with Daddy," and I'll put my arm around her, and we'll just kind of talk about silly stuff or serious stuff. If I have to have a serious conversation with her, I'll sit at the edge of the bed with her and I'll get real close to her face and I'll talk to her about, makes me want to cry thinking about it. I'll talk to her about just whatever those things are in a way that she knows that it's not just content. I'm here with you. I'm tickling you. But she's got this very whimsical, whole sort of relational part of her. So I could tell her story like her oldest brother, but it only goes so far. I could give her a task, but she'll eventually get bored because no one's with her. But now I have got to integrate that part of her in so many different engage her. So hopefully I'm answering the question. Is just that engaging them, it's been a training. I won't call it, it's not nothing magic. I won't call it I'm super intuitive. It has literally just been a training for each one to realize that this does not work for CJ, my oldest. This works best for Sarah, doesn't work for Levi, or blah, 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 blah. So I have to walk through that every day. And I switch all the time. And then lastly, when we're in group sessions, I'm having the group session, I mean group family things or group activities we're doing. I'm seeing the components of all of that. Sometimes I've got to either think individualized. How does CJ catch this? And then sometimes I'm thinking, okay, what is Sarah thinking? And then there's other times I'm just thinking, well, I've got to get the information out there and I have to even draw them in different ways in the midst of the group dynamic.
Mm.
That's not always fun. It's sometimes annoying because I have my own personal style of the way I learn. I'm thinking, goodness gracious, but that's my educator hat because it's other centered. I want them to be empowered. It's not necessarily I am the focal point of how everybody should learn.
Mhm.
I need them to catch this. So if I don't translate it for them, they don't have that capacity. I do, or I have to work on that. And so as I translate it for each one of them, I've noticed the effectiveness there, and that has just taken a lot of practice. It's not default for me. It took a lot of practice. So those are some.
Conrad, what I love and what I'm hearing is so important, and there's no doubt you know your children individually. Just listening to you share with me about their personalities, I think that in essence is the answer is that know your children, right? Like how do I shift? How do I know what parenting style goes with what temperament or what parenting style goes best with what child is for me to know who my children are. And that trial and error, right? That mistake, again, just popping up. Just want to encourage parents. I mean, one of the things I share in a parenting class is when was the last time you took your trash can in the kitchen and moved it? I mean, if you just go home right now and move your trash can to the other side, the other corner of the kitchen or into under a different drawer, wherever you place it, just put it in a different spot and watch how much trash gets dumped in the original spot. My point is that it's a really good indicator that it takes a lot of time to change behavior. It's not just one step. You don't just move the trash can and then you're just dunking every time, right? You end up throwing it in that corner where it used to be. And that's the same as parenting. Like when we respond, we finding things out about our children, we're going to mess up. We're going to do it wrong. We're going to do it like that old play from our dad's playbook, right? That old thing that we used to hate so much that we now find ourselves doing because that's just where the old trash can used to be. You know what I'm saying? So I love your response, Conrad. I think you're answering the questions perfectly in that you've taken the time to understand who your children are, to recognize that they each need a little bit of different dad in order to make that thing work. And you kind of you said it, and so I thought, man, it's a great segue into our next question. And so Tyrone, I want you to take this one. When your child's temperament clashes with yours, uh, what keeps the peace? What keeps the peace? Because listen, the reality is it's not about if, it's when that child's temperament clashes with yours. What do you do to keep the peace?
Man, such a good question. Such a good question. And this is just a really great conversation, and I'm enjoying just listening and hearing from you all as well. Um, it could be a daily thing, and I think I wanted to say this is very interesting that Conrad has three and you have two and I have one. Um, there is a lot of pressure. I didn't grow up as an only child, nor did my wife. I understand as dad, as a parent, that we put a lot of pressure consciously and unconsciously on our son to be great and to be this single, kid who has to he has no excuse really, right? So even in COVID, I said I have a COVID baby, so to speak. He started kindergarten, so from the computer, that was he was in kindergarten, and I think even from then, realizing that he was going to be around more adults than he was kids at that age, it's kind of we've been trying to help work out in him um, that he can still be a kid, but we do require a lot of him, right? And there is responsibility. And I think, some of my heart is that my son didn't get to grow up and have some of those social cues that you grow up with having a sibling, right? Like, hey, this is not a good time to say something back to dad or mom, right? Like, be quiet. You just have, when you grow up with siblings, you just learn from siblings, right? And I think he's missed some of those cues along the way, even though he has cousins and we raise him around other kids. But I think And sometimes he experiences pressure and puts pressure on himself to think. And again, that's why I would go back to that performance. We are not a performing family. We don't perform for love. We don't perform to be a certain way, but we do have encouragement as his parents and as his guides that you do have a requirement to be a leader and to be something. In COVID, me and his mom both went back and got our masters, right? Like my job as a parent is to show him that he has no excuse to fail, right? Now, that doesn't mean he won't fail, but he does have to try, right? I like what Conrad said. We are a family who is always about learning, right? You have to learn, you have to attempt. And going to that question, we butt heads all the time. And really there is no there is no I don't know what the ointment to cure that would be. I think my wife sometimes ends up becoming the referee and the mediator, mainly for her peace, right? Because we're clashing. And to begin, it's out of love, I think, when I think about it and put it in the right context. He clashes with me because he sees me as his equal,
Mm.
right? Because he loves dad, and dad is the one who's always around. So he sometimes slips into this place that he believes that we're on the same page. And
Mm.
it's because I relate to him in that way that he feels, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that he's comfortable enough to relate to me in that way. But there are times where I have to stand back and say, "Hey buddy, you're talking to dad. You don't pay the bills. You don't get to talk in that way, right? There's the tone in your voice right now is saying that you are talking in a way that you don't get to take that authority, right?" And we do have that clash, but in the end of it is not. I think the beauty is that we do have the relationship, and he understands that he is going to be challenged. We are going to challenge him. We're not going to let him settle, but we're also not going to push him further than he needs to go.
Hmm. I love it. So he's talking strong at the house. That's what we talk.
Man,
That's what we say.
strong. This talking. You're talking from you saying it from your chest a little too hard,
Talking with
buddy. I
his
need you.
chest. Hey,
Yes.
we have that same conversations at the house. I love it. I mean, and I do think, man, I think it's great. And sometimes I want to own some of that. Sometimes it's dad allowing it to get a little too friendly. Listen, we ball out, right? Like
Yep.
we
Yep.
want to throw the ball. We got there on the court in the driveway, getting
Yep.
after it, shooting hoops, talking a little junk. The
Yep.
gums are bumping, and and all of a sudden it just like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. Now you talking too much. You're talking like a man out here. Like what,
Right.
and so I appreciate that. And I think sometimes my wife will say, David, you led it in that direction. You let it
Mhm.
get there. And
Yep.
and I don't know that she's wrong in that. And so making sure again that trash can analogy, like, all right, well, making sure that when we don't get together, and there have been times where I've had to take breaks. I don't know where you guys are, but sometimes when he and I are banging like that, I have to leave the room. And and hopefully that's modeling to him that, hey man, when things get tense, you can always walk away. Like sometimes we just got to remove ourselves from that situation. Now, I say that, and then the parenting in me says that's oftentimes a catch point too, right? When was the last time, and I can talk to anybody that's listening right now, the last time when your child walked away from you when you were having a conversation with them, the first thing you say is like, where are you going? Don't walk away from me. The reality is we want to teach our kids that walking away is a good coping mechanism. It's healthy, especially when they've decided, hey, I don't know how to respond in this moment, and maybe my response is inappropriate, so I'm going to walk away. As parents, we've got to allow the latitude for them to do that, because that's a really good decision in the moment to make an excuse to walk away. And so sometimes we have to build parameters and rules around that coping. Like, you can walk away from me, you just got to let me know it's a timeout, and that we can come back to it. That doesn't mean you're excused from the conversation. Totally. It means you're excused in the moment. Now you've got to come back to me in 15, 20 minutes when things settle down so that we can finish the conversation. But I love what you said, man. I love it because I think that's the reality. I'm going to end with this because I know we're coming down short on time. I think we're about at the 10-minute mark. So I want to give both of you an opportunity because I think this is important. A slide that I want to show is a study, and I've shown this, I think, before in one of our other ones. So if those of you that have listened have jumped in on one of these other panels that we've had, you may have seen this. This is a study that was done out of Michigan Children's Hospital, and it was done in 2019. And the point of it is really just to show that dads oftentimes get a bad rap for our parenting style. We're a little different. And it seems like in this study, the number one criticism seemed to be coming from the other parent. And I go back to where I started and I said that, listen, all of our parenting styles, they in and of themselves have good qualities, each one. So understanding that my parenting style doesn't have to be my wife's parenting style is not necessarily a bad thing. It can actually, what I think oftentimes happens is that they can actually, what do I want to say, benefit one another. Kind of, they work well together. One of the things that I want to point out in the highlights is that half of the fathers who have been criticized, one, they're doing it by their other parent, but 2 and 5, when receiving that criticism, respond by seeking more information. And listen, that's encouraging. And I want to encourage any dads that are listening now that if you get that message that, hey, you're not doing it right, like what you're doing is wrong, I just want to encourage you to just be one of 2 of the 5, right? To be the ones that go back and find the information. Maybe scratch your head and say, how could I do that better? And not be that 1 in 5 parent who says, hey, listen, and then I should just give up. Being a part of it is good. Some of the messages that we hear is that we're too rough, that we don't pay attention, that we don't feed our kids well, and that we have heavy hands. I want to ask you guys, you two gentlemen, what do you think dads are really good at? What do you think that maybe we as parents, men, fathers, what do we do better than maybe other parents? What do you think we're best positioned to do?
For the sake of time, I want to paint a word picture. I recognize that I have this philosophy that I believe I need to create a playground, an informative, life-giving learning playground for my children.
Mm,
Words, when they play in my heart, they learn muscle memory, they learn fine motor skills, they learn there's identity there. There's places where they get security and safety to know that dad is human, but dad has strength, dad has authority, dad also has a real life, and I do real things. So I tell them a lot of stories, I allow them to come in close, I allow them to ask me questions. Well, the reason why I use that playground is because if I don't become their playground, they're going
mm,
to go seek it out somewhere else, whether it's
mm,
social media, television, another fathering voice, another voice somewhere that they're going to go seek it out because my children are going to be looking for identity. And so when there are these things that are criticized, sometimes what's happening inside of me, I have to work through my own emotional proclivities, my own brokenness, my own issues,
mm,
because I want to create a playground environment and I get them a bigger playground. I want to create an environment for them to say, that hurt daddy. When daddy was younger and I experienced this, or even now I'm hurting, I'm crying over this situation. My children need to be able to come in and see that and to see that, it hurts. Yeah,
mm,
yeah. I had a friend. I lost this relationship. I've had
mm,
to work through this. I've been in this relationship for this long, but I'm making it kid friendly or kid sensitive to their age and with their development level, but letting them at least see my emotion that it's okay to emote, it's okay to feel, it's okay. You see, I'm getting at. So I don't know if I'm answering the question well, but just that word picture of
love it.
learn, let them come and play inside of the playground of my heart.
Well, and Conrad, what I hear you saying that is like I care deeply. I think fathers are well positioned to be transparent. Like in that, when you're talking about just seeing me be emotional, like for me to handle the things that are happening, letting my children see that sounds to me like transparency. Like I just want to be, and maybe it's authenticity. Maybe it's just being authentic as who you are, so that they in return can be who they are. I love that. Tyrone, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Conrad painted such a great picture in the playground analogy, and I would just say, I think to go along with that is exploration, allowing them. There's so many different things on the playground, but I think one of the things dads do well, and parents in any way, any fashion can have this, whether you are a dad or a mom or whatnot. I think giving them the freedom to explore, but
Mhm.
in like you said in the slide before, doing it in healthy ways. What are the healthy boundaries? I think back to one time. So my wife's side is very musical, and his grandfather bought him a drum set. And I remember it was when we had a smaller house then, and I didn't want to put the drum set together because I knew how loud it was going to be, right? And this is the story that we so I never put that set together, but he found other ways to play drums, and we had other little drum sets around the time. But I also realized later on that that could have kept him from exploring that option, right?
Mhm.
He could have went on to be a world-class drummer or play for a band or any of those things. And I realized sometimes we shut our kids down when we don't allow them to explore
Mhm.
uh, things that we may not like. Um, I love camping. I love going outside. My spouse hates bugs. She does not enjoy outside. So she's not going to take him camping, but exploring some of those things. And even the things and this is what I'm learning now, even at this point in my life, even things that I dislike myself, still giving him the freedom to explore and being willing to explore it with him because it could have a different effect on me, even if I didn't like it before him. And I think that's what we are good at. That's
Mhm.
great at is giving them the freedom to explore so that they can find themselves, like Conrad said, in home base, not find themselves in social media, not find themselves in all these things, these other things that are happening and influences outside of our homes.
Man, I love that. Transparency and opportunity. I mean, it just seems like a really good. When I'm listening to you all, I'm thinking back to the parenting styles in where we started this conversation and thinking about dad's tilts versus mom's tilts and really what I have seen over my 20 years of working in this field and just hearing you all and knowing the families that I know, I feel like dads are really well positioned at seeing our kids' future selves. That when we look at our kids, we see the potential of who they can be. Man. And moms oftentimes see who the child is in the moment. And so, what's nice about that is that you've got both ends of the spectrum, just like what I was saying with the parenting style of having the authoritarian and the laissez-faire together create that active parent or the authoritative parent. The perfect parent becomes the two that can see the child in the future and want the best for that child while caring for that child in the moment, in the right now. And so moms and dads do that so well together, that I think that's really important. And I do think that's true. I think we as dads allow for that transparency in the hopes that they will be transparent, that we allow for opportunities that they can be the best selves. I just think that's amazing. So I will stop with that. I will turn it over because I really do. While I think those were some good questions and we had more I could ask, I really want to be answering the questions that our audience is having or that they are wanting, or the things that they're thinking about and maybe struggling with. If dads or moms that are in the audience that they say, hey, listen, I want to do that. Here's a reflection. Here's some opportunities for you, for the audience to speak. You can share something you learned. If you learned something new, you can talk about something that you do differently as a result of hearing something that you heard today. Or if there's a question that you just want to ask, we would love to hear from you. So I'm going to open that up. Any parting or lasting thoughts from Tyrone or Conrad as we wait to see if anybody has a question?
I do have a kind of a cultural thing. Some ancient cultures would use a lot in their language, they'd use a lot of word pictures. One particular ancient culture, um, some of them may know from a Hebraic framework and some ancient script, there would be two letters in the word father, ab, a letter aleph and a letter bet, and that this meant aleph meant strength or first, and bet meant house. So ab, in some context, Aramaic says Abba, but here's the point. He's giving a cultural framework. The picture of the Aleph would be ox head or strength, and the picture of the Bet letter would be a house. So the strength of the house, kind of this word picture context would be the father, Abba, and other cultures, not just Hebraic, they would see the father as the strength of the house. Now, if you take away the father from the house, imagine the it would be fatherlessness, or there's a lack of strength in the house. And what can happen in the whole family dynamic when the father's removed or the father's present, in the father's active, the father's non-active. What happens in terms of strength and or lack of strength? So I'm planting that seed of thought that I had to learn for my own world. I realized that when I'm active, I bring strength to the house, securities, and a lot of kind of certain parameters. But when I take that away, sometimes it hinders and it brings a lot of kiltering and alterations. Not saying that women don't have strength. Not by no means. My wife is a very strong woman, but I'm painting a picture from some ancient context of thousands of years ago's culture. That's the way they would draw the word picture for father, strength of the house. So I just want to plant that seed of thought.
I would just encourage anybody, dad, mom, just understanding that in this point in my life that I'm understanding that I am still on a journey. And and David, we've talked, but I realized that I sometime last year I realized that I was parenting based out of my shame for the way that I was brought up, that I was brought up in a very shame-based parent household,
Mm.
and now learning to work through some of those things so that quick example, Joshua plays basketball. And I found myself some days thinking it was motivation, like, hey, if you're not dribbling today, somebody's going to be better than you. Somebody's out dribbling. And I found myself doing that very often. But then one day it dawned on me, and I had this epiphany that that is a shame-based way of trying to motivate him. And I realized that I have been trying, it's out of love, or at least what I thought, right? It comes from a place of me wanting to motivate him to be better, but it's coming out of a place of fear and shame. And I
Mm.
think I would invite all of us and encourage us that, we are all on a journey, and to understand, where you are, the things that you say, how you move on a daily basis, and how we motivate our kids to make sure those areas are that we're checking ourselves and that we are making sure that we're whole and trying to get to wholeness, because that is emotional healthy parenting, and that's the best thing we can offer our kids.
Man, that is so good, dude. That is so good, Tyrone. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And the need to understand parenting, so much of it is, even thinking back to that question about how does my temperament and my son, when they don't match up, how do you handle that, right? I mean, so much of that is just the living complexities of relationships and how we handle that. And so much of how we handle those responses are based on early experiences, childhood experiences, oftentimes in those responses and maybe those reactions, those behaviors seem to get hardwired. And it's really hard, man. Like you were saying, it's just so easy for me to come, like things come out of my mouth that I didn't intentionally think first. They just come out as as a response, as that thing that happened with me a long time ago that is not anything to do with my kids, but everything to do with me. And how do you figure that out? Conrad alluded to it earlier. I just think making sure we're doing the work of understanding who we are, our past hurts, has so much to do with how we respond to our kids now. Man, that's so good. Thank you for saying that, Tyrone. I see a couple of responses in the chat. People have learned some things, and that's good. Most of them came off of that infogram. Interesting to see how moms and dads perceive children differently in the here and now and in the future. And um, I think that's insightful. It sounded like that was helpful, and that's good. I tell you, it's amazing to see how much of how different a parent I have been for the past 15 years. Just where I was and how I struggled so much early on to finding so much joy and love with my kids now. It's an amazing journey. And so much of it is a reflective journey. I've had amazing guys in my life. Excuse me. I have these two men here. Um, have been amazing. So just the value of finding good fellowship, people that you can be honest with, share struggles with, trust that the advice is good. All of those are important.